Okay, Masechet Shekalim, Daf Yud Aleph 11. The Mishnah mentioned that we use the extra coins and extra produce for various items. One of the items that they would have to build was a ramp for the Para Aduma. They had to get the Para Aduma from Had Habayit to Had Hazetim, where they would actually slaughter it and burn it. And they want to make sure that the Kohen does not become Tameh as he's leading. The Kohen Gadol would be the one to do it as he's leading the Para Aduma from one mountain to the other. So just in case there might be some bodies, dead bodies that are buried underneath, and the corpse impurity can rise up to the sky, and anyone who walks on top of it creates a tent impurity. However, if you have a tefach and then a covering, then that stops the tumah. So if you build a bridge made out of arches, and it's actually double arches, right? One set of arches and then another row of arches on top. Then anywhere you walk on top of the second arches, there'll be space in between, and then something solid that will stop the tumah. Okay, so regarding these bridges, one opinion of Abba Shaul said that this is not paid for by the money of the Bet HaMikdash, but rather the Kohanim themselves would pay for it because they get to benefit from it. And now we learn a very interesting source regarding these bridges. Amar Rabbi Chanina, Shahsit Gedola Haita Bibnei Kohanim Gedolim. He says there was great haughtiness among the Kohanim Gedolim. Sheyoter Mishishim Kikere Zahav Hayu Mosiim Ba. They would spend more than 60 talents of gold building these bridges. They made them like really fancy, ornate, to bring a lot of honor to themselves. של פרה עומד, ולא היה אחד מהן מוסיף פרתו בכבשו של חברו, אלא סותרו בונה אותו משלו. Every time someone had to bring a para aduma, let's say in generation ago, the previous Kohen Gadol did it, and the ramp was still there, the new Kohen Gadol, when he had to bring a para aduma, wouldn't use his predecessor's ramp, but would demolish it and build a new one with his own funds, because he wanted to show, kind of outdo the guy before. So they really overspent on this. So that's the source, and it seems to be critical that they're spending so much money kind of on it for their own glory. However, we have a question on this from a baraita. Hetib Rabbi Ola kumer Rabbi Mana v'hatane Shimon HaSadik shete farot asa lo ba'kebesh shehosi etzo hosi etzo. So here it says Shimon HaSadik. Shimon HaSadik is well known. He is mentioned in the Talmud as the Kohen Gadol that met that met Alexander the Great, and he's known throughout to be very righteous. That's his name, Shimon HaSadik. And so regarding him, it says that he prepared 2 para adumas in his lifetime, and he destroyed the first ramp that he used and built a new one for the second time he used it. And so this seems to be also extravagant and haughty, yet it's attributed to Shimon HaSadik, who we would not criticize in this way. He was known to be humble. So how could it be? Can you say that Shimon HaSadik was haughty? Rather, it's because of the great regard that we have for Para Aduma. That's why we give it great honor. In other words, it's not really actually for the Kohen Gadol's personal honor, but rather for the Para Aduma. We want to show how special it is and to what extent we go to keep it in a tahor state. This might have been part of a polemic. One of the polemics between the Pharisees and the other sectarians was that the other sectarian says, hey, a Kohen Gadol has to be 100% pure to prepare it, whereas the Pharisees and then the rabbis say a Tivul Yom is allowed to bring a para aduma. So they would actually take a Kohen, make him tameh, make him go to the mikveh, and make him prepare it before sunset in order to show their halacha. So for people not to think that they're being lazy about it or that they don't care about the tum'ah, perhaps that's why they went to such a great extent to keep it tahor in all other ways and then show that this halacha that they had a polemic about. All right, but these are very interesting stories. There, besides the bridge, they had along the bridge projections and walls so that the Kohen would not, by mistake or on purpose, peek out over the edge and then he might become tameh. So it was walled on both sides. That way, there wouldn't be any problem of the Kohen sticking his head out. Okay, we next learn in the Mishnah about Rabbi Akiva, Omer en mistakerin. There's machloket there between Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Ishmael says, if you have extra monies, you can reinvest them. You go and buy goods and keep them in the Bet HaMikdash safely and a tahor way. And then when individuals want to come, they will buy the wine and flour from the Bet HaMikdash, and the Bet HaMikdash can get a profit from the sale. So that was Rabbi Ishmael. Rabbi Akiva says, no, we don't profit from Bet HaMikdash money. It's sacred, just leave it there, especially because you might have a loss, and then the Bet HaMikdash will lose out. So regarding this, Elaim Rasai, you have said Shelo Basachad like Desh Mutad. Even Rabbi Akiva would agree that if you have a guarantee that the Bet HaMikdash will not take a loss, it's okay. So if the seller says, hey, listen, if you end up losing money on this, I'll eat the cost, right? But the profit will go to the Bet HaMikdash, and it's permitted because then the Bet HaMikdash is protected. So if someone's willing to take that deal, that's okay. Kada bar zemina itafkad gabe medal deyatmin ata ushal leRabbi Mana amale it ba'et di hafsada didach v'agira detarvechon share Rabbi Chia bar Ada itafkad gabe medal deyatmin. Okay, and we have another example of this with Bar Zamina, that he had orphans deposited money with him, so he's taking care of this money of orphans. So you got to be very careful with that. And so they came and asked Mana, can we do the following agreement, right? And so this is, if you want, I'll accept all the. I want to invest the money of these orphans, and any loss I will take the loss, but any profit will split, right? So the caretaker will split the profit with the orphan's estate. Is that permitted? And he says, yes, that's permitted because for sure, surely there won't be loss, and at least there's possible gain for the orphans. In fact, Rabbi Chia bar Ada had funds, and he did exactly that. So therefore, just like orphans, so too in Bet HaMikdash. An example of Bet HaMikdash didn't say they split the profits, but with the orphans, they do split the profits. But I think the key thing in either case is that they're protected from any loss. Okay, next section, Matar Perot. So this the leftover of produce, which means, according to Rabbi Ishmael, anything that they made money on, right? Those extra profits, what do you do with them? So Rabbi Ishmael said that Rabbi Ishmael says that you use them for the extra dessert sacrifices. When the Ben Mizbeach is idle, you bring extra ones. So this is high level money that you're actually using it for extra other sacrifices. Okay. Now regarding this, Matnitin Rabbi Ishmael, that section at least of the Mishnah, that follows Rabbi Ishmael, who says you can make money on it. Now, what are these items? We're going to have two opinions, Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Yochanan. First opinion, Rabbi Chia bar Yosef patar matnita. He explained the categories in the Mishnah as follows: motar perot, sachar lehekdesh. What are motar perot? What is the leftover produce? That's the profits that you get, and that goes to hekdesh. It's treated like consecrated property. Motar nesachim zo se'ah rebi'it. The extra, that's the category that Rabbi Ishmael spoke about. Matan Nesachim is leftover libations. That's the category. Ishmael did not have that, but Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Chanina Sagan Kohanim, they both talked about the leftovers of libations and said, so what is that? According to Rabbi Chia, that's something called Se'ah Revi'it, a fourth Se'ah. How does this work? The Bet HaMikdash, they have a lot of money up front. They could pay up front. So they would go to a seller and say, listen, we're going to buy a whole year's worth of oil and flour and wine, and we're going to buy a se'ah, the value measure, for 4 se'ah for 1 coin. Great. So they get a good deal. Now, if the price should rise during the year, and you can only, let's say, get 3 se'ah for a coin, it seems that would be typical. As as the year goes along, the price would go up as supplies run out. So in that case, now the Bet HaMikdash has the goods at a cheaper price. They can sell any leftovers, the leftover quarter they can sell for a profit. And so that's the motan nesachim that Rabbi Akiva spoke about. So this is interesting because it means that even according to Rabbi Akiva, you are permitted to make money on the deal, but this would be a very safe bet. Okay, that's all one opinion of Rabbi Chia bar Yosef. However, Rabbi Yochanan, he explains the categories in a different way. Patar matnita, motar perot, zo se'arevit. Rabbi Yochanan explains that the extra money that you buy and sell with, that Rabbi Ishmael talked about, that's the fourth se'ah when the price goes up and they have goods, they can make money on it. And motar nesachim, the extra of libations that Rabbi Akiva spoke about, that's talking about something that's overfilled. When someone would sell to the Bet HaMikdash, they want to make sure that they give the Bet HaMikdash fully whatever is owed. And so the sellers would overfill it and give it to the Bet HaMikdash. Now, that means they actually have a little bit extra. So the extra from the overfilling, that is what according to the Rabbi Akiva, the Bet HaMikdash could sell for a profit. Okay, now we're going to ask questions on each of these opinions. Hold on, doesn't Rabbi Chia, doesn't he also have the overfill? That was the first opinion. He didn't mention anything about overfilling, but that's a source of profit as well. So how come we didn't speak about that? Amar Rabbi Chizkiah, ma denafal lese'ah rebi'it, nafal leberusin. So his answer is that anything that you can use for the fourth se'ah, you would also use that overfill, right? So he had a category of the se'ah rebi'it, and he says he'll include, which was Rabbi Akiva's motan nesachim, and so overfill he includes also in that category. Whatever you do with one, you'd also do with the other. Okay, now question. Al de'ateh de Rabbi Chia bar Yosef nicha en mistakerin b'shel hekdesh af lo b'shel aniyim lefichach ze v'ze lo hayu modin ba'perot. So now question, according to the Rabbi Chia bar Yosef, that's the first opinion, everything makes sense, everything's fine, because en mistaken b'shel hekdesh, avlo b'shel aniyim. So right, according to the Rabbi Akiva, who said you cannot make any money from hekdesh funds or from that of the poor, so then it also makes sense. That's why he says with the motar perot, which is money that you would make from buying and selling, reinvesting, he and Rabbi Chananya Segan HaKohanim agree that you cannot use it. Okay, so that makes sense, and that's what we thought it meant in the first place. However, according to Rabbi Yochanan, the Mishnah is difficult. Amdu mishalosh isapek me'arba. Al Mishnah later on in this Masechet will say that if the price was 3, then they can go and make money on the 4th, right? So that's se'ah revi'it. And then, so it seems like according to everybody, you're allowed to make money on se'ah revi'it, and yet Rabbi Yochanan says that's motar perot, which Rabbi Ishmael spoke about, and Rabbi Akiva forbade. They agree that you cannot use perot for that. You cannot use perot, and according to Rabbi Yochanan, motar perot is the 4th se'ah, and everyone seems to agree that you can use the 4th se'ah. So now we're confused. According to Rabbi Yochanan, who says that motar perot means the 4th se'ah, so that would mean that, okay, that should be fine according to Rabbi Ishmael, but not okay according to Rabbi Akiva. And yet the next Mishnah seems to say that everybody agrees that the 4th se'ah is permitted. So how are we going to reconcile that? Well, simply, lo hayu modim beperot bekais hamizbeach, aval modim hayu bechdei sharet. Rabbi Akiva agreed that that the Bet HaMikdash can make money from the 4th se'ah. They just disagreed about what you're going to do with it. According to Rabbi Ishmael, you can use it for extra sacrifices, that the dessert for the Mizbeach, and the Rabbi Akiva says, no, you can't use it for that. They did agree that if you have that, if you made that extra money, you can use it to buy sacred vessels. So that's how, and that way we can reconcile all of the sources. Ad gedun beruse sibur, va'afilu beruse yachid. Okay, now back to Rabbi Yochanan spoke about the overfilling of the vessels, and he said if an individual comes and they bring a korban, and now we have the overfill because we can sell it to them the amount that they need. Now this belongs to an individual. So if individual comes and he has this overfill, and now the Bet HaMikdash is going to take it and use it for the Motar Nesachim, well, they're using it for communal sacrifice, right? Because according to Rabbi Akiva, Motar Nesachim goes to Klasher, according to Rabbi Chananya, it goes to Kaitz HaMizbeach. So now, how can you take something that belongs to an individual and use it for a communal fund? Well, actually, you can. A woman who makes who weaves a tunic for her son, who is a kohen, it's okay as long as she completely donates it to the community, as we saw yesterday. So therefore, even if something had belonged to an individual, if they really donate it, then it can go to the communal funds and can be used for communal purposes. So that's how we solve that. All right. Ad kidon beruseh lach, afilu beruseh yavesh. All right. Until now, we understand like motar nesachim means if it's a liquid measure. See, when you pour a liquid, so anything extra is going to go into the vessel and then overflow. As there's a general principle that when something goes into a sacred vessel, it becomes sacred. So when you're overfilling, it kind of first joins in with the liquid in the container and then overflows. So yes, that overflow will be sacred. But what about if it's a dry measure, if it's flour? So I pour flour, it fills it up, I fill it a little more. Now the extra that falls off never was inside the vessel. So is that considered sacred, even though it didn't actually enter the vessel? The answer is going to be yes. We're going to learn it from the Mishnah in Menachot. And the Sachim shekadshu b'kli v'nimsa hazevach pasul. Im yesh sham zevach acher yikribu imo, im lav lanu v'im lav lanu yifselu belina. V'im lav lanu yifselu belina. The Mishnah says that any nesachim, any libations, that you made them kadosh, meaning you put them in a holy vessel. And then turns out the animal is pasul. So now you have this holy libation in a sacred vessel, and you don't have an animal to do with it. Well, if there's another animal that you're going to sacrifice, and put this wine libation together with it. If not, there's no more animals that were done for the day, and you leave it over till the next day, and then it becomes pasul, and then you cannot no longer use that wine. And so you see here in this Mishnah, this could be talking about wine, but it could be talking about flour just as well. And since it makes no distinction between wine or flour or what's in the vessel or overfilled, so we infer from that there is no difference. Anything that enters a vessel, even if it overflows a vessel, whether dry or liquid, becomes sacred in itself. All right, and now we get to the next Mishnah, which discusses how does the Bet HaMikdash pay artisans? They do work for the Bet HaMikdash, and how are they going to get paid? Because we saw yesterday, you can't just take money that's consecrated and give it to someone, right, and then let them go spend it. The kedusha of them, that's inherent in the money, has to transfer onto a thing, another item. So we got to transfer it onto something, and then the money can be given to the artisans to pay. So regarding the ketoret, this was done in a more complicated way. Motana ketoret. We have the incense, right? We have spices that we burn all year round, and one in the morning, one at night. One every day, and then in Yom Kippur we have one in the morning and one at night. The ketoret that we read every day in the prayers say there's 365 portions that you do every day. For every day of the year. It's interesting that it has a solar year, and you wonder if maybe that's hinting to some point in time in history when in the Bet HaMikdash they used a solar calendar. But of course, by the time the rabbis came around, they're assuming a lunar calendar, which is 11 days shorter, which means that they would have 11 extra portions of the ketoret. And now it's kadosh, and what are they going to do with it? So here's the system that they would use. There's a lot of explanations to this. I'm going to follow. I think the simplest one is the Rimigash. He says as follows. You tell the artisan,
give me a coin from your pocket. So the artisan actually gives the Bet HaMikdash, presents the Bet HaMikdash a coin, a cheap coin. And then what the Bet HaMikdash will do is they'll say all of the Kedusha, all that's in the Ketoret, will transfer onto that coin. And then they'll exchange. So now the Bet HaMikdash has just one cheap coin, even though it's worth much less than that Ketoret. It seems to be okay. They're allowed to do that. And they give the spices to the artisan. Now, the artisan doesn't need the spices. He can't really even use them. So, but they give it to him as, here's your salary. But now, since the artisan doesn't want the spices, he wants money. So now it's no problem. Now, in the Bet HaMikdash, they'll go to the new funds for the next year, because the fiscal year is over, and they'll take some of those new funds, and they'll transfer the Kiddusha from that money onto the Ketoret, give the money to the artisan, and the artisan gives those spices, the Ketoret spices, to the Bet HaMikdash. And now you have actually a double benefit. You're able to pay the artisan, and now these spices that were from last year, because you made them desacralized and then sacred again, and you transferred ownership back and forth, now you can use them for the new year, because this time you paid for them with the new money. So both sides get benefit from this deal. That's all assuming that there were new funds available. If there were new funds didn't come in yet, then you can use last year's money, and then they could only use it for last year, but at least the artisan got paid. Okay, so that's how the Mishnah solves the problem of paying the artisans and also being able to use the Ketoret for the following year. Now, Gemara asks on this, seems to be not be happy with this, at least the way I explained it. Of course, still according to this, and sooner or later, right, in one way or another, you're having something that's sacred, become desacralized with something else that's sacred. I mean, look, the Bet HaMikdash had Ketoret, and they had the funds that they want to pay the artisan. And first the Ketoret goes to him, then the money goes to him. All he did was give one coin, so you can't take all that Kiddusha and stuff it into one coin, right? Something wrong with this picture. So the Gemara is going to introduce another way of solving it. Here's what you do. These artisans, what were they doing? Some of them, at least, were building the Bet HaMikdash. So when they built the Bet HaMikdash, they just take stones, whatever it is. And so you bring some money, and you say, this money will transfer to the building materials that the artisans used. Okay, good. So now that those bricks will be kadosh, but the money now is no longer kadosh. So now maybe Ketoret mechalel alehen, then you bring incense and you say the Kiddush of incense can go on to this money. That's okay, because this money is no longer, but right, you transferred the Kiddush of the money to the bricks, and then from the Ketoret to the money, and now you give that Ketoret to the artisans, and then you buy them back, right? And when you buy them back, you transfer the Kiddusha from the Ketoret, from the money to the Ketoret. And so now the artisans get money that's not sacred, and the Bet HaMikdash reacquires Ketoret that is sacred. Okay, so just adding kind of one more step there, and then that would be fine. Now, otan ma'ot me'yaseh bahen. What should we do with that money to pay the artisans? And like, which artisans are we paying? Before I said it was about the artisans building. It could be them, but there's other people that are preparing. For example, people preparing the Ketoret itself, they have to get paid. You can give it to these families, Bet Garmu and Bet Abtinas. They were the experts in preparing the incense and the showbread. They knew the secret recipe. They knew exactly how to do it. They would pass it on from one generation to next generation. Then how you begin, and they should get paid. Need to get paid for their services. So how are you going to pay them? So you could use the system. Says you should only pay them for work that they already did previously, but you should not pay them in advance for future work, because after all, whatever they did for the previous year has to be paid for money for that previous year. You pay them in advance of this year's money for next year's work, but then you're misusing those funds. Okay. So question that Rabbi Chia asked, what should you do if you don't owe them money? And now you have extra ketoret, and so, right, we don't know what to do with it, and we don't owe them money, we can't pay them for next year, and we don't owe them any money from last year, so what do we do with that, the extra ketoret? So notice that it's by the name of Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Chia is the one that asks the question, and Rabbi Chia is the one answering the question, right? So there's someone in his name. So he answers, he could use it to buy offerings for the Mizbeach. I mean, you could still, somehow transfer it into money, and with that money, you'll buy extra korbanot that you offer when the Mizbeach is idle. Okay, so the Gemara is going to wonder why he asked the question and answered his own question. This is what, did he change his mind? He thought that there was no answer to this, and then he changed his mind about something, and that's why he had an answer, right? At first, he asked a question and needs an answer, and now he resolves it without a problem, right? What's going on here? The answer to what Rabbi Chia was thinking is, he asked the question was, can you use the motar ketoret, the extra amount of ketoret, and you use that extra to buy temple vessels? And he wasn't sure about that. And when he answers, you could use it for mizbeach, or the extra sacrifices. That he knew for sure you can do. But with the vessels, he wasn't sure. So that's what he was debating. Okay, now regarding the vessels, what was the essence of his debate of whether you can buy sacred vessels or not with the incense that you with the extra incense? Well, that is related to the following machloket. The question is, if you prepare incense in a non-sacred vessel, so because look, like these families, they've been preparing it at home. And let's say they use their regular pots and pans to prepare the ketoret. Is that permitted? So Rabbi Yosef ben Rabbi Chanina says no good. No, you have to use sacred vessels the whole time to prepare the ketoret. Rabbi Yosef ben Levi says you can use it. You can use non-sacred vessels, and then you can transfer it to sacred vessels later on. And so that's the machloket, and that's related to Rabbi Chia's question regarding what's the connection between the vessels and the extra ketoret and the vessels. Okay, so would it be the same level or not? Now, my tamad Rabbi Yosef ben Rabbi Chanina, according to Rabbi Yosef, who says that you have to use sacred vessels the whole time when you're preparing. He'll learn it from the word kodesh. So the ketoret is holy. Kodesh, even when it's first created, has to be done in kodesh, therefore in sacred vessels. What's the reason for Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi who says you can use regular vessels? That just means that when you pay for it, you have to pay for it with sacred money. That it has to be prepared, so the people can prepare it in their house with regular vessels, and then they'll buy it with sacred money, and then it will be kodeshi. That's sufficient. But Rabbi Amar Rabbi Yosef ben Rabbi Bon, Atiyad Rabbi Yosef ben Chanina Kishmael, Ud Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi ke Rabbi Yochanan. So we're going to have a correlation now. Rabbi Yosef ben Chanina, who says it has to be made in sacred vessels, that follows Shemuel. Rabbi Yosef ben Levi, who says it can be made in regular vessels, that follows Rabbi Yochanan. We'll demonstrate the second one first. The Tanenan, we have a Mishnah later in Shekalim. Someone says, I want to donate everything I have to the Bet HaMikdash. And most of the things, you'd sell it and then donate the money. You'd redeem it and donate the money. However, they'll say some of the things were fit to be used for Korban Tzibur. I have something in my possession that can be used for Korban Tzibur. Now, what is that? What might I have in my regular home that can be fit for Korban Tzibur? Rabbi Yochanan Amar Ketoret. I might have these spices. I have some frankincense in my spice closet, and Bet HaMikdash could use it. So there you go. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, even though it's be even prepared ketoret, all mixed in the right way. And so according to Rabbi Yochanan, if I have the ketoret, even in a non-sacred vessel, it's called ra'ui lekorban, and I could donate, and then the Bet Mikdash could use it. So you see, Rabbi Yochanan follows Rabbi Yosha ben Neviah says it does not need to be in sacred vessels. Against that is Rabbi Hoshaya, the pater boman mishel bet abtina she'en noter b'scharo ketoret. No, it could be talking about someone that works for the house of Abtinas. They're the ones that were experts in preparing the ketoret. And he would receive incense as his wages. So because the Bet HaMikdash gave him ketoret in the first place, that's what he was doing with ketoret. But presumably that would be in sacred vessels. So that would follow the other opinion that says it has to be in sacred vessels. Okay, now where do we see that? Rabbi Yosef ben Chanina follows Shemuel, and they both say it has to be in sacred vessels the whole time. From the following, Rabbi Yosef ben Chanina kishmuel, Damar Pehuna b'Shem Shemuel, Machteshet asu ota kichli sharet la kodesh. There was a mortar, right? A mortar and pestle, and they would make one special that would be a sacred vessel. Now, why would you need a mortar? If not to crush the ketoret, which means that it had to be a sacred vessel. Which means that the ketoret had to be prepared with sacred vessels. And so you see that follows Shemuel's opinion. So Shemuel agrees with Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Bon Amrah Rabbi Chuna. They said this whole thing in front of Rabbi Yosef. We have a question really on Shemuel, because how can it be that something that you made holy in a klei sharet, right? We said before, the principle is if anything you put in a sacred vessel becomes sacred. And so now this ketoret you're making sacred, and so can it be redeemed? In our Mishnah, right, we went through this whole process of we take ketoret and we transfer it to money, and then we can pay artisans. Well, how can something that was in a sacred vessel, which became sacred, can't be redeemed, right? We thought that was the principle. So according to Shemuel, who says it needs to be in sacred vessels the whole time, what would you do? According to the other opinion, you can keep it in non-sacred vessels until you're ready to use it. And that way, it will be easy to transfer. So what's Shemuel going to answer that? Shemuel's the one that requires it to be in sacred vessels. Shemuel's the one also who is lenient and says there's a special leniency regarding communal offerings like incense that you can actually redeem it. So Shemuel is both machmir and mekel. He's very machmir in you should keep it in a sacred vessel from the beginning, but he also allows it to be redeemed even though it was in a sacred vessel. Palgun hotiru temimim, Shemuel amar niftin kitmimim, Yochanan amar niftin kifsule hamukdashim. Because this relates to a machloket between Amoraim, hotiru temimim. Let's say you had unblemished animals that are perfectly good, but now they're left over because they were donated from last year's funds. So now is the cutoff. We can't use them for next year's funds. What are we going to do with them? So Shemuel says you can leave them unblemished, and we can redeem them. So you can redeem something that's an animal, a sacred animal that's unblemished. You can redeem it for money, and then you'll take that money and you'll buy other ones for next year. So Shemuel is lenient on redemption. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Niftin Kifsule Muktashim. He says no. You have to. Rabbi Yochanan says that they would become. You have to redeem them like consecrated animals that have been disqualified. In other words, you have to wait till they get a blemish, if they're no good for some reason, and only then can you redeem them. So you see that Shemuel is more lenient regarding redemption than Rabbi Yochanan, even though he's more stringent regarding keeping things in a sacred vessel than Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, okay, now this is going to be the last topic. If we have extra goats from that year, what do we do with them? So he already said you can redeem any animal, right? Even if it's unblemished, and if it was used for an olah, then you could redeem it and get another olah. And then let's say it was meant to be a chatat, all the more so you can redeem it. Why all the more so? Because a chatat can only be used for a specific person, for a specific sin, right? If they already got another one or they died or whatever, so then it's not going to be used as a chatat anymore. So for sure, it can be redeemed and then made into an olah. So Shemuel has no problem with that. According to Rabbi Yochanan, we'd have to let them graze until they develop a blemish, and only then could we redeem them. So you see that would apply to this Seirim also. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak mekayisin bahen et hamizbeach. Okay, another opinion is this, like says, you can use them to add extra korbanot on the mizbeach when the mizbeach is idle. Hold on, can you take this thing that was meant for a chatat and make it an olah? So Rabbi Yosef says, yes, you can, because when regarding communal offerings, when let's say they bought this goat, they were not designated as a chatat or as an olah until the time of shechita, because they knew that something might change, and then they wouldn't need it for this anymore, so they would leave it undesignated, just keep it unblemished, but not designated until shechita. So therefore, actually, it was never designated in the first place for a chatat, you can use for olah. Amar Rabbi Chiya tenai betin hu alamotash yikribu olot, and or similar is answers that yes, they would designate it, but with a condition. The betin said, oh, there's a built-in condition just in case you can't use it for a chatat, you'll be able to use it for an olah. So therefore, because we have that condition, we can always exchange it for something else. Amen.